Story 1. When the other two children I went to school with dismembered him and scattered the remains in trash cans around the neighborhood. One of the children fled to Israel, where he was ultimately apprehended and sentenced. He was eventually killed by an inmate. The third child took his own life in jail while awaiting the murder trial. Story 2. The car broke down, and he knocked on someone's door to use the phone in the 1980s. The person shot at him through the door. Story 3. He hung himself in the stables close to his home at the young age of 13, while the bullies faced no consequences. Story 4. Terrorist attack at Brussels airport. She had just gotten married and was flying from there for her honeymoon. Story 5. A girl in my English class had hiccups for over 8 months. She sounded like a rooster during class. Shortly after her hiccups went away, a drunk driver collided with her car, and she passed away. Story 6. He smoked poison ivy in an attempt to get high. He was already asthmatic, and inhaling that poison affected his lungs, making it difficult for him to breathe. Story 7. There were many car accidents. One person fell down a steep hill after drinking while partying in the woods, and another was killed on the job while working in construction with his father. Story 8. When I was a junior, a classmate attended a wild party, drove home intoxicated, and caused an accident in which he died, while the other driver was injured. He was a football player and quite popular, so he was treated as a martyr, being referred to as the finest young Christian man. Girls who didn't even know him cried all day, and half the school attended his funeral to skip class. People put his jersey number on their graduation caps. It was disheartening. I never understood it. It was tragic that he lost his life due to a poor decision, but infuriating that the circumstances were glossed over and no one truly learned from it. Many other classmates received driving under the influence charges in the following years. Story 9. I went on a trip to Germany and saw the bus going to refuel. I panicked and ran into the road, looking the wrong way, and was killed instantly. Story 10. He was part of a street gang and was killed with a machete by his best friend on the subway about a month ago. Story 11. He was 11 or 12 years old when he jumped out of the window because he was afraid of the police who showed up at his door to talk to his parents. He was a child with special interests that didn't resonate with his classmates and spent his time at the comic book store, which is not unusual. However, he was a loner because of this. We were all in 6th grade, around 11 or 12 years old. He stole a figurine from the comic book store and was immediately caught. His parents were well off, so that wasn't the issue. Being younger than 14, nothing significant would have happened to him. Yet he was so ashamed of what he did, or perhaps trying to escape, that he jumped out of the window the moment the police tried to contact his parents. I still think about this kid 22 years later. Story 12. He was being chased by the police for something he allegedly did not do and thought it would be a good idea to put the officer in a headlock, resulting in him being shot in response. I felt really bad finding out. He was in special needs classes due to some mental disabilities but found his calling as a tennis coach and became fairly successful. Story 13. Suicide. Then someone else a week later. Then Fox News reported there was a teen death cult at our school. Story 14. He was driving home one night and hit the bend in the road in the worst possible way. He was probably the most popular boy in high school, the nice kind, if you can believe it. His favorite song was Free Bird, and everyone in town had some kind of dedication to him on their truck. Some probably still do. His sister died a few years later. She was also extremely popular. I am 38 now and still think of them. Rest in peace, Dustin and Teresa. Story 15. She was golfing when a tree fell on her. It was a freak accident because there aren't many trees on golf courses. Story 16. Committed suicide by hanging from a tree in the front yard. Our bus driving by was the first to see the body, and the bus driver stopped at a nearby home to call for help. It was a strange year. Story 17. Undiagnosed heart problem. While sitting in traffic one day, his heart suddenly stopped. His car rolled to the curb and people attempted to help, but it was not something that cardiopulmonary resuscitation could assist with. He was 19 or 20 years old. Story 18. He struggled with addiction and overdosed at a party. while the children with him were too afraid to call for help. Story 19. My best friend died during basketball practice when we were 14 due to a blood vessel bursting in his heart. He was known to occasionally have seizures, so hospital visits usually focused on his brain, and his heart health was never the priority. It was sudden and tragic, and it changed me forever. I miss him every day. It has been 19 years now. How time flies. Story 20. I grew up in the South, where there was no shortage of drunk driving incidents. There was a year with 5 drunk driving deaths, and during one spring break, 2 kids who didn't know each other separately drowned. Additionally, at senior prom, 1 girl died from alcohol poisoning, and it turned out our principal was at the party with a group of minors and tried to cover it up. It was a mess. Story 21. In junior high, we had a classmate who was probably the most popular and a huge Michael Jackson fan, but also a bit of a class clown. He went swimming in the lake with his friends in the next town over when he drowned. This happened a few weeks before we started high school. Story 22. Around the age of 15, she ran away and was staying with a cab driver who was between 30 and 40 years old. He shot her 12 times. They overturned his conviction due to insanity. Story 23. Drinking and racing a C3 Corvette convertible with no roll bar, going over 100 miles per hour on an undulating back road. The car lifted and then rolled over, sliding about 50 yards upside down and grinding off the windshield and their heads. Story 24. I cut class to sneak into her high school and see her boyfriend. I walked straight into the side of an 18-wheeler truck on the highway next to our school. This incident led to the cancellation of the 50-year tradition of being able to leave campus for lunch and caused the failure of several businesses near the school. Story 25. I don't know, it was in grade school, possibly 3rd grade. Twin boys sat beside each other at the 2 desks in front of me. They always dressed alike, very cute blonde boys. One day, the teacher mentioned that one of them had died, with no explanation given. When his brother returned to class alone, I remember staring at the surviving twin and the empty desk beside him. That was my first notion of death, and the sensation is still with me. Story 26. In 3rd grade, a girl in my class was hit and killed by a drunk driver while walking home one day. The whole school came together to build a small memorial with a tree in the center, north of the tennis courts, which is still there. Story 27. A kid that my friends and I disliked decided it was a good idea to assault my friend's little sister. My friend found out about it while at school. I had never seen him run so fast in his life over to the guy. The moment he saw him, my friend grabbed a pool cue and shoved it into the guy's face. I haven't heard from my friend since. A few weeks later, everyone in our school found out that the assaulter had attacked multiple other girls. Story 28. Liver cancer was diagnosed in her, and she didn't even know she had it. By the time she found out, it was too late. She passed away in less than a year after the diagnosis. Story 29. A child was struck by a drunk driver while walking to school, which occurred right in front of the school. Story 30. The most high-profile incident occurred when a child fell off a car while car surfing. It received media coverage, and we held an assembly to discuss it. Story 31. Russian roulette. I didn't even think that was a real thing. The man was depressed and going down a bad path and started a solo game. Story 32. They saw the exact same question on Reddit 732 times, and it caused a rift in the space-time continuum that swallowed their head, leaving the rest of their body to rot in their computer chair. Story 33. Suicide. He came out as gay, and his intolerant parents were so horrible to him all the time that he took his own life in a park. Story 34. Hit by a drunk driver while on a bridge, they were pushed into the water and drowned, unable to escape from the vehicle. Story 35. She bent down to pick up something she dropped on the floor of her car. A CD, I think. Her foot slipped onto the gas pedal, and she drove out onto the highway where she was struck by a truck. Story 36. Bike accident. The issue is that she was cheating on her boyfriend with my best friend's boyfriend, and I am still the only one who knows. Story 37. He rode a racing motorcycle. He pulled out too fast after school, got clipped by a car, and flipped into a fence. Story 38. I have lost many classmates, either during our school years or shortly after graduation. 3 students were killed in a car during a drag racing incident in their senior year. Another student overdosed right after graduation. 1 student was shot by police during an altercation after a routine traffic stop. However, the most devastating loss for me was a girl I sat next to in science class. She and her entire family were killed during the summer before our senior year by her father, who then took his own life, reportedly due to a significant tax evasion scam. Story 39. 3 people were involved in an accident, and 2 died. They were going dress shopping for a homecoming event when one of them forgot her checkbook. They turned around and returned to her house, speeding, and lost control while going around a corner, crashing directly into a tree. 2 were killed, and the driver survived. Story 40. He jumped off the school bridge. The school did the usual thing, loved by all and had many friends. The only reason anyone knew who he was is that he was bullied badly. However, the school refused to acknowledge this. Story 41. I had already graduated at the time, but one of my brother's lacrosse teammates was involved in a tragic car accident and died at the scene during their senior year. The accident was not the driver's fault, which only added to the tragedy. To make matters worse, he had a younger brother who was also on the team, and they were on their way home from practice when the accident occurred. The brother was injured but survived. I cannot imagine what he must still be going through. Story 42. Drinking at a graduation party, participants were racing an all-terrain vehicle and a utility task vehicle. The utility task vehicle left the road on a curve, going about 35 miles per hour. It went into a drainage ditch and rolled over. The driver was injured, and the passenger was pinned by the utility task vehicle and died. Story 43. When I was 17, there was a girl who was about 3 years younger than me. She was a bit of a loner, somewhat unusual, and very quiet. She was bullied by the popular girls in her year, but there was one girl who was also like this, and they started hanging out together. Shortly before school started, her much older sister took her swimming during the summer holidays, and on the way back, they were in a car accident, and she died. The first assembly back was all about her, and I remember it being so depressing that I begged my best friend at the time, if anything happened to me, to make it much more fun and interesting. I remember that everyone in her year attended her funeral and seemed very upset, even though they made her life miserable when she was alive. What has stayed with me is seeing how lonely and sad her friend was. That broke my heart every single time I saw her around school. Story 44. This didn't happen at my school, but my chorus teacher told me one of his former students died in a car accident. Story 45. Car crash. I didn't know the kid personally, but he seemed pretty popular based on the number of people crying over the next few weeks. Story 46. He ran out of cannabis and read something online about asphyxiation as a way to get high. The website he visited referred to it as the choking game. He hung himself from his bed frame, passed out, and ended up in a position that completed the act while he was unconscious. His mother and sister discovered his body and then checked his computer, where they found conversations with people on a messaging platform about his decision to try it because he couldn't handle being sober around his family, believing it was better than nothing. Story 47. A close friend I grew up with disappeared while she was on her way to university. Story 48. These individuals were parents, teachers, or students after graduation. They attended a rural school and knew 2 people who were killed by trains and 2 others who died in tractor accidents. Story 49. I had a teacher commit suicide when I was 10 because he turned out to be a child predator. He couldn't live with the shame or impending consequences, so he decided to end his life. Story 50. A 14-year-old boy was riding his motorcycle on a residential street. He went flying around a corner and did not see a truck with a flatbed trailer across the road, which he went right under. This resulted in instant decapitation. Story 51. He was cleaning his rifle and accidentally shot himself in the head. He was bullied quite a bit from what I remember. I only interacted with him a few times, but it was tough. We all knew he wasn't actually cleaning it. Story 52. One person was hit by a train, and another died, but no one has found out how it happened, and close friends never spoke about it. The details remain unknown to this day. Story 53, Heart Defect. I was running from third base to home during a baseball game in gym class when I was tagged out and collapsed. Story 54, Home Invasion. Apparently, the man was shot execution style right in front of his sister, who also attended our school, and his mother. He wasn't exactly the most reputable individual, so rumors suggested that it was retaliation for something gang-related that he was involved in. Story 55. A car accident occurred when he was not wearing his seatbelt. We learned that one of his friends had run away again. Luis, who has now passed away, went out with his cousins to search for him in places the boy often visited. They did not stop at a stop sign, and he was thrown through the windshield. He was pronounced dead at the scene. We had just finished 8th grade. Story 56. She threw herself in front of a train after being molested by her older brother, and her family denied it and buried the matter. Story 57. Car accident involving a new driver. The driver had only half a day of school. There were too many people in the car, and it was traveling at high speed without seatbelts. Story 58. A child at my elementary school experienced a house fire in the middle of the night. The only survivor was the father, who jumped out of the window and survived with a broken leg and arm. Story 59. 6 other kids attacked him until he had a seizure and died because he used an offensive term. He had Tourette syndrome. The same kids assaulted me a month earlier because I stood up to one of them the day before I was attacked. I don't know what happened to them in juvenile detention. Story 60. I have this schoolmate, actually, I developed a crush on him. I only realized it lately when I remembered him. He was quiet, intelligent. I am attracted to intelligent men, handsome, had a dimple, thick eyebrows, and a prominent nose. He died suddenly at school. We used to sleep on the ground floor back then. When his classmates tried to wake him up for his next subject, he did not respond. They said he was experiencing a nightmare. The rest is history. That was in 2015. Story 61. In the 90s, his parents gave him a snowmobile as an early Christmas present. He accidentally drove it into a tree. I can't imagine the torment his parents went through during that time. Story 62. A friend had bruises that wouldn't heal and a nosebleed that wouldn't stop. Within a couple of weeks, he passed away from complications of a blood disorder. It was the first time someone my age, with whom I had been fairly close, died. Took me a long time to get over it. Story 63. When I was 16, 2 of my friends died in a single-engine airplane crash that one of their fathers was flying, along with one of their boyfriends. Took a couple of weeks for them to be found, so our small school had news cameras around for several days. The waiting and uncertainty were difficult. There was one funeral with 4 closed caskets. The father was a fire captain, so nearly the entire Phoenix Fire Department attended. It was a tough day. Story 64. Year 7. She fell off a horse, hit her head on the road, went into an induced coma, and then had the machines turned off. She was 13. Year 8. She took her own life by hanging from her stairs at home. She was 14. Rest in peace, beautiful girls. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.